I don't see that anybody's in here yet, which is kind of to be expected. I've been having some issues, like always, getting this ready to go. So when you guys start jumping in here, let me know that you're there, and then we can kind of start getting into it. You may notice I'm coming at you from in the truck, and that's just because it's rainy and it's windy, and where I normally do this, the audio quality I think would be just absolutely terrible. So at the last minute, I kind of made a change here and decided to set up in the truck to do it. So all right, I can see there you guys are. How are we doing? That's always a very scary moment, I have to tell you, when you hit the button to go live and then you just see that no one is there. And it's such a relief when I start seeing you guys come in here. So thanks for showing up. Yeah, let me know how the audio is. I know that I've never actually done one of these in the truck before. I thought it would be better, but I have to have my phone a little bit further away. So but yeah, even if my voice sounds a little bit funny, that's probably better than wind. And then the other thing is that it's raining right now, and you know, rain on a metal roof is a soothing sound, but also really loud. So man, okay, now you guys are coming in here. Awesome, great to see everybody. So I don't really know what happened. Yesterday I started filming. I thought I was going to be all good to have a video ready to go for today, and it just didn't work out that way. You know, things end up taking longer than I thought, and I think actually I got enough filmed yesterday. I think that I can go ahead and finish filming today, and I'm thinking to upload this video on Sunday rather than Saturday, but I still wanted to jump on here and do a live stream, just because I know when people are expecting a video on Saturday, I like to try to at least give you something, even if it may not be exactly what you were expecting. All right, I see somebody talking about mice already, so I guess we can go ahead and we'll start there. So over the last week, and if I assume you guys all just kind of know what I'm talking about if you're at a live stream. I assume this is not the first time that you're watching some of my content, but just to kind of set the stage, this year the mice have been just absolutely terrible. I don't know that I've ever seen them this bad here in the barn, back at my house, and it's not just here, it's neighbors. My parents' house is about 4 miles up the road from where I'm at, and everybody is having a big problem with mice this year. So I started out the year kind of dabbling with, you know, a few things here and there. I set out the good nature traps in the barn, which in the past have been really effective, but this year they haven't really worked that great in the barn. They have caught a few, but when we're talking about the number of mice that I'm dealing with, just 2 good nature traps is not going to cut it. So what I found, I kind of talked about in the last video, is that bait traps in the barn, I felt like were not working that good, because what they do is the rodents kind of tunnel into the hay, and they're going in. They especially like this forage mix hay that is made up of wheat, oats, and barley, and they'll go in, they'll actually eat that. And it's very obvious. You can tell by all the chaff on the ground that they're chewing on it and they're eating it. And that's really what attracts them to this barn. So when you've got a virtually unlimited supply of feed for the rodents, it's really hard to tempt them into like eating some peanut butter when they've got an unlimited supply of hay here. So I didn't feel like the bait traps were working that good, and that's where the barn cats came in. And at the beginning of the year, I did have a black feral barn cat that showed up on its own. I've never seen this cat before. Or no, that's not true. I did see this cat last year But it was very elusive. You know, I would catch a glimpse of it here and there, but I would barely ever see it, and I didn't even see it on the trail camera. So I don't know if it just passed through or if it was living here or what the deal was. But that black cat had a fairly permanent home set up here at the beginning of the year. But again, just having one cat, it was just not gonna cut it. You know, I mean, I'm getting to the point where when I pick bales up, I can count like 5 mice that run out of each one. So you multiply that over however many hundreds of bales are still in here. Yeah, there's a lot of mice. So I ended up getting 5 more barn cats from a guy that I got in contact with through Bree's sister. And he had these 5 cats that he was looking to find new homes for. So I got them, and I released them here in the barn the other day. But I don't think I've mentioned this yet. So when I was unloading the kennel, I was carrying the cats from the kennel and just kind of sticking them in the round bales, which, on a little side note, I did get a little bit of criticism for doing that. And one comment specifically that I'm thinking of, I think it was a lady, and she did not like the way I was carrying the cats, and she did not like the fact that I was carrying them through the rain. And I kind of chuckled. I actually kind of expected that somebody would say something along those lines, because I know, like, when you scruff a cat, I guess it's kind of like when you carry a pig by the hind leg. It doesn't maybe look like the nicest thing to do, but it really doesn't hurt the animal at all. And especially with cats, I mean, that's how mothers carry kittens, and you can carry adult cats that way too. It does not hurt them at all. You know, cats they let you know when they have a problem with something that's going on. And actually, when you scruff a cat, they usually just mellow right out. But the reason that I carried them that way is just because I don't know these cats, and that's the safest way that I can carry them without getting bit or scratched or anything like that. And then as far as walking them through the rain, I mean, it's like 10 feet that we're going through the rain. It's water, and it's, you know, I know cats don't like water, but you know, what can I say? They're fine. Anyway, so I got 3 of them unloaded. The reason that I didn't just carry the kennel out of the truck and set it down in the barn, because that was my original plan. But I don't know if you guys noticed, those cats were gigantic, and I don't know exactly how much they weigh, but I would say, I mean, would 20 pounds or 25 pounds, like, that would be a big cat, right? But not an unrealistic guess. So let's assume there were 5 of them, so that's about 125 pounds of cat in that carrier, which is difficult to handle. So I decided, rather than trying to carry it and flipping them over and, you know, the many potential ways that could go bad, that it would just be better to get a few of them out, and then once I lightened up that crate a little bit, I could move it over into the barn. But what I don't think I've mentioned yet is that when I set the crate down for the last 2 cats to go out, they really had no desire to leave that kennel, and I wasn't gonna make them do it. I just figured eventually they would go out. Well, I came back later that night to check on them, and they were both still in there. And I was telling Bree about them because she has always wanted a big cat. She likes big, gigantic, fat cats, and that's exactly what those guys were. And she ended up deciding that she wanted to keep one. So I caught one and took it back home. So it's been living in our laundry room since. And so yeah, instead of adding 5 barn cats, we only ended up adding 4. And, you know, now the kids like the cat, Bree likes the cat, so it's pretty much, you know, I'm outnumbered on that one, I guess. So since putting the cats in the barn, I've only actually seen one of them, and it was very brief. He just had his head sticking out. He was, hiding down there between the round bales, and I don't know if he didn't hear my truck roll up or what, but I did catch a glimpse of him, and as soon as he saw me, he ducked right back in there. But I have been putting the trail camera up in the barn and moving it around, and I've caught these cats like all over this barn. I thought maybe they were just kind of hiding out in the corner here where I have the food dish set up for them, but I've caught them clear on the other side of the barn. And I think before I leave here today, I'm going to put the trail camera up in the top of the barn and see if they're getting up there as well, because I'm hopeful that they are moving around and covering ground. I mean, that's exactly what I want them to do. So that's kind of where we're at with those guys. Now, I mentioned that I've had a lot of rodents in my house as well. I don't think I've talked about it much in videos, but yeah, we've had a rodent problem at home too. And now that we've got the big cat in the house, and we also got a couple kittens maybe a month ago. So we've got 3 house cats. We went from no house cats now up to 3. So I don't think that rodents in the house are going to be much of a problem anymore, but they can get into our basement and they can get into our attic as well. So those are kind of the 2 areas that I'm really focusing on as far as my trapping efforts go. Sorry. I just got done feeding cows before I hopped on the live stream here, and the wind is blowing, and it was blowing hay up my nose. So if you see me scratch my nose every once in a while, that's why. So in my basement, I've set up, what do I have in there? I've got 3 or 4 snap traps for rats. I've got 5 snap traps for mice. I've got 1 electric trap where like the mice walk in it, and once they get to a certain part, it electrocutes them and kills them that way. And then I moved my bucket trap over to my basement as well. And in the past, if you guys have been watching my videos, I've never really bragged about that bucket trap much. I wasn't that impressed with what it had done. But in my basement, I set it up on the stairs that go down to the basement so that the ramp going to the bucket trap is level. So where the mice are on the stairs, they can just walk right onto that bucket trap without having to climb anything. And that seems to have made all the difference. That bucket trap is catching a ton of mice now. And I wish that I just would have set it up in there to begin with. That seems to be really the ticket for that. When I first put traps in the basement, to give you an idea of how bad the mice were, I think the first 2 days I caught like 10 mice. So that means I set my traps in the prior evening, let's say. In the morning I checked them. Every one of them had a mouse. So then I reset them and checked them again that evening, and I think like half of them had a mouse. And the ones that didn't have mice, they had the bait removed. So there's some of those mice have figured out how to eat that bait ever so gently so that it doesn't trigger the trap, which is where that electric trap or the bucket trap really come in handy, because there's no escaping those. So it's been an issue, but I feel like I'm gaining some on it. And next year I will definitely be more prepared, especially here in the barn. Getting the cats after the hay is already in there is not the way to go. I need to have the cats ahead of time, or as soon as I get the barn filled up, I need to be getting them in here so that population of rodents is not allowed to really get established. Because I think that is the problem, is that once it gets so far out of control, it's just so hard to rein things back in. But if I have natural predators out there in the barn prior to filling it up, then they can just kind of keep things in check. And that, I think that's what I did the year before. And like last year, rodents were really not an issue out here. I don't think I ever even saw one. Maybe not until I got to like the very last wall of bales, and they weren't bad at that. So, you know, there's definitely a right and a wrong way to do this. Let's see. I have not been looking at the chat here. Let me run through and see. Yeah, Merry Christmas to everybody. We're getting close. What is today? The 20th, I want to say. Yeah, feral cats are not nice. That's true. That's kind of how you want them to be. Yeah, I know that. I'm just seeing all these comments about carrying the cats, and you know, sometimes when I see a comment like that telling me that I'm being mean or whatever it might be, you know, I'll have sort of a gut reaction or a comeback that, you know, I want to say, but I've learned over the years to just not engage with people like that because it doesn't ever go anywhere. But what I kind of wanted to say to that lady was, you know, these cats had two choices. They could be carried 10 feet through the rain, or they could have gone to a shelter where they would ultimately, you know, end up not living anymore. So I don't know. I thought 10 feet through the rain wasn't that bad. Some cats like water. I've seen tigers go swimming, but I've never seen a house cat that liked water. You'd have to show me that. Let's see. Oops. Sorry, pressed the wrong thing there. What about a shelter dog? You know, if I didn't have kids, I would be more open to doing that. But with a shelter dog, you just don't know how they were treated. You know, I mean, unless you could get one as a puppy. But getting a fully grown shelter dog, I just, you know, like I say, with having little kids around, just the risk is too much for me. I wouldn't be comfortable with it. So, Eric's asking me if I'm going to the Tulare Ag Show, which if you're not from California, Tulare is in Central California. It's one of the biggest ag shows, I want to say, in the state for sure. Maybe in the country. I think maybe not in the country. It is a very big ag show though. And I don't plan on going to that one. It's a little bit far for me to go. And, you know, all the ag shows that I've been to, which are not many, but the ones that they have in California, they're all just geared so much to tree crops, which, I mean, my family does have a walnut orchard, but it's not a big enough orchard to be going and buying a bunch of that fancy orchard equipment. So, I wouldn't go to Tulare. I might go to the one in Colusa. That's only like, what is that? An hour, maybe a little over an hour away. I might do that one. I think it's in February. And so Bree was telling me that I should try to do a meet and greet at the Colusa Ag Show. And I told her I didn't think that anybody would show up for that, because I don't know how many of you guys are close to Colusa or would drive out there to do a meet and greet. If that's something that people are at all interested in, go ahead and let me know. I wouldn't be against doing something like that, but I feel like I would go there and you know, nobody would show up. So let's see. Somebody okay, R4 Farms is asking, what advice would you give to someone new to the cattle industry? Oh, that's a tough one. I've thought about this question before, and I've been asked before, and it's hard to answer just because everybody's circumstances are so different. But I guess there probably are some universal bits of advice that I could give to someone. And you know, yeah, it's hard to know kind of where to start. I guess you would have to know what a person's what basically what they have to start with. My friend Carson at the Rip Ranch was talking about this a couple videos ago, and his advice was that you should be looking for land to lease, because the reality is, if you want to get started with cattle, you need cattle, obviously, and if you're going to get cattle, you got to have somewhere to put them. So you kind of need to get the land first. If you already have some land that you can use or have access to, then the hard part is done, because what's difficult is if you're just starting with nothing. The hard part is that you have to get land and cattle at the exact same time, and that's just not always realistic. So let's just assume that somebody is getting started and they have small amount of acreage that they can use to raise cattle. I would say the first thing that you should really think about is, what is your market going to be? I've had friends that are small producers like myself, and they just tried to make money selling calves at the auction. And man, if you're a small herd, you're just not gonna that that's not the way to do it. I don't think. I think there are better avenues that you could go down, better markets that you could get into, and be more successful with a smaller number of animals. For example, you could get into like fair steers, if that's something that you're into. It's not something I'm into, so I probably wouldn't do that. But if you showed steers growing up and that was something that you liked, reason being is that if you get the right genetics on, let's say you have 5 mother cows, right? And you can artificially breed those cows with whatever bull you want. If you then halter break those calves, sell them as fair projects, you can double, triple the value of that calf as to what you would get for just selling something at the auction. If you're not into fair steers like me, then I would be looking at doing direct beef sales. Again, you can basically add, I haven't actually put a pencil to it, but you can add a lot of value to your calves just by direct marketing them yourself. And I think that if somebody was just starting out and they didn't have, if they weren't walking into like a multi-hundreds of animals, large herd, that I'd be looking at something like that. So that's kind of big picture stuff. I would also say, if you are a small producer, you need to be creative. You need to be able to think about things differently than large producers. You need some kind of a mentor, somebody to give you advice when things happen that you don't expect. Like for me, I have someone like that, and his herd is a lot bigger than mine. So some of the stuff that makes sense for him to do maybe doesn't make sense for me to do. And you have to kind of know how to pick apart, like what is going to work for your setup. The example that I often go back to is round bales, because like I've said 1,000 times, nobody around here really uses round bales. And when I got my round baler, I know that a lot of people thought I was crazy for doing that, or they thought at the very least that it was a bad idea, and that's just because no one else does it around here. So it's unknown. And, when you're talking about your livelihood, most people are more inclined to make the safe bet and just do what, you can see your neighbor doing, or you can see this guy doing that's working well. So yeah, I know nobody actually came right out and told me that it was well, people told me it was a bad idea before I did it. I had mentioned it to a few people that I was thinking about getting one, and said, oh, don't do that, you'll never be able to sell the bales, you won't be able to do this, you won't do that, blah blah blah. But I just kind of kept going back to what I had seen other producers on YouTube doing, and it's just like, man, the rest of the world uses round bales. What are the odds that the rest of the world is wrong, and this little niche here in California is right? Like, it just doesn't really make sense. So I went ahead and did it, at the or kind of going against what a lot of people had advised me. And I still say that that was probably one of the best purchases that I've made for this operation ever. I think it's, what are we on, like the third or fourth year with that machine. I figured that it would pay for itself in 3 years, because I wouldn't have to pay to have the bales hauled. I wouldn't have to pay to have them stacked. I wouldn't have to pay to put them in the barn. I could do all that stuff myself. So from my point of view, it made a lot of sense to do it, but I had all these people in my ear telling me not to do it. And, just kind of going back to what I'm really trying to say here is you've got to be able to, I guess, not be afraid to look stupid in front of your peers, or, the people that you kind of deal with on a regular basis. And that's not always easy. I mean, none of us want to look stupid, right? And there's a chance too that you might take a big swing like that and it ends up not working out, and then you do look stupid, and everyone gets to say, I told you so. So you just kind of have to be able to take that, I guess, is what I'm saying. So yeah, for a new producer, I would say those things. And I would also say there's a lot of good resources on YouTube and the internet, but there are also a lot of resources that are not as good. And what I'm mostly thinking about is there's a lot of videos or people that make content, and when we're talking about grazing, for example, they make it seem as though there's only one way to do it, their way is the right way, and case closed, just end of discussion. And I always kind of took issue with that, because you have to factor in the people that are giving this advice or putting out this knowledge. Is their environment the same as mine? Because whatever they're talking about, it may work where they are at, but is it going to work here? So that's the other thing when you're filtering through all of the things that you hear, all of the information out there, is what works for one person in one part of the country is not necessarily going to work for you in your part of the country. And again, I know that I've said that 1,000 times as well, but I don't know. It's I feel like it's still not getting out there. I'm just getting over a cold, and I can tell my throat is not going to make it. I don't think we're going to be putting 2 hours on this live stream, but when am I going to make the bale unroller? That's a good question. I've been unrolling bales by hand here the last couple weeks, and I've been really thinking that I need to do that. So I haven't made it up to the steel yard here in a while. I need to go. And when I do go, I'm planning to get the stuff to make it. But I kind of know full well that this year, at least, If I went and got the metal tomorrow, by the time I got the bale and roller done, I probably wouldn't be needing to use it anymore, just because I'd be done with the bale grazing, or I'm already getting to where I don't want to bale graze anymore because it is so wet out there, and the cows, just wherever I drop a bale out, they're just tearing the ground up. So I think we're kind of winding down on that, but there is a chance that I might want to use it at the winter pasture when I get them moved over there. So I think that it's something that I need to just go ahead and build it very soon. Like, I want to say right now, but it's probably not going to happen right now. But I would like to get it done this winter so that next year when I'm ready to use it, it's ready to go. You know, it's on a list that's very long and full of many other things, and it's just kind of a matter of juggling priorities to see what, what's going to happen first. In fact, I'm I'm kind of looking at all these things that I want to do this winter while the weather is nasty. Like today will be a good day to work in the shop, and that's what I'll be doing when I get done here. But I've got all these projects, and I just I when I'm sitting there trying to decide like which project do I want to start working on next, I just kind of wish that I had you guys there to be like, well, what do you guys want to see first? We got, this, and this. What do you want to see? So maybe what I'll do is put that up on a poll. Just think, get my like top 5 things that I know I need to build in the shop, and I'll be very curious to see if you guys vote on that, which one is at the top, or if they're all pretty well even, or how that goes. And then maybe I'll just use that to kind of figure out what order I'm going to get all this stuff done. Let's see. Excuse me. Merry Christmas. I see all the Merry Christmases coming through here. It's always an exciting time of year. Bree, well, not just Bree, our whole family, really. We love Christmas. I don't really talk about it that much on camera, but we do. And in fact, the way that we operate is after Halloween is over. So November 1st, that's when Bree starts decorating the house and getting the tree out. And we celebrate Christmas basically from November to the actual day, with the thought being that, if you're going to drag all that stuff out, you may as well enjoy it for a little bit longer. So John is asking about, or mentioned, to check with LS about doing a meet and greet. And we had talked a little bit about going to the ag show in Louisville, the big one. I think it's in February also, and maybe doing something there, but I haven't really heard much about that. And I don't know if I would even be able to go. So, I mean, that would be probably the one to do it at, just because I feel like it is so big and a lot of people go to it. So if we end up doing that, I'll definitely give you guys plenty of heads up to know if we're going to be there. But right now it's like 50-50. It could happen and it could not. I'm just reading through the comments here. So Mark's saying, don't I sell 85% of my calves at auction? It's not that many. It's probably about 60% that I sell at auction. And that was the model that we followed. So I'm kind of jumping back here, talking about markets to get into for somebody that's starting out. And growing up, that's what my grandpa always did. He took all the calves to the auction, but he wasn't really trying to make like a real business out of it. It was more of, just kind of something to do. I guess it made a little bit of money, but it wasn't like he was ever going to live off of that income. And when I'm talking about finding markets to get into, I guess my thought is more of like how to eventually reach a point of, you could sell calves at the auction if you're just happy with doing things a conventional way and you just know you're not going to make all that much money. But I mean, I guess my advice was more of like, if you're really just trying to maximize what you have and you don't have a lot to start with, that's what I would do. And I am trying to move more into direct sale. I think we're going to do our first USDA butcher this year. That is the plan. I don't know if I've talked about that. I know I've said that I want to do it, but I've actually spoken with the guy and I don't have appointments yet, but I'm thinking that I'm hoping actually in the next couple of months that we might be able to do that. So let's see what else we got. Yeah, I think this time it's good to get into direct sale stuff, or like farmers markets are great if you can get into one, just because I don't know, in this day and age our food supply is just I don't know, the more you the more you learn, the more it's just like, man, I just wish I didn't have to buy anything at the grocery store. I know that's probably not realistic, at least not yet. But yeah, I think there are a growing number of people that appreciate and understand the value of buying local food where they know the producer, and it's just, like in my case, let's say the meat only changes hands one time. It goes from me to the consumer, and there's no mysteries about where it come from or where it came from, or how it was treated or what was done to it is the big thing. So those people are out there. They're not always the easiest to find, but once you kind of get a group of people going, then usually word of mouth kind of helps spread these things, and you could do it. It's I'm often reminded of a quote from Joel Salatin, that when this was like before I quit my county job, every morning on the way to work, I would watch these videos about people that quit their full-time job to farm, just trying to get inspired or trying to get the motivation to do it. And one thing that he said that always kind of stuck with me was, if you want it, you gotta want it. And it's a really simple quote, but if you think about what it means, if you want it, you gotta make it happen. Just sitting here and say, oh, I want that, is not going to get it done. In fact, growing up, my friend's dad used to tell us this too, because we all rode dirt bikes, and I would always say, man, I wish I had a new dirt bike, because I could never afford to get a new one. And I would say that to him, and he'd say, no, you don't. I was like, what are you talking about? Of course I do. He said, no, if you really wanted it, you'd find a way to make it happen. And I kind of thought about it, and I was like, you know what? He's right. I could do it. I'm just, I guess not, I wasn't willing to make the sacrifices necessary to make it happen. So just saying that you want something is generally not going to get it for you. You got to be willing to, to do it. So not to be harsh, but sometimes a little bit of harsh advice is what's needed. Let's see, who else? I think I'm getting way behind on the comments. I'm just going to jump ahead. So if I skipped your question, just go ahead and leave it again if you wouldn't mind. Oh, wow. Thank you, Suzanne. That is amazing. Thank you so much. Wow. Tyler says he's late. What did you miss? Well, I don't know. You got to go back and watch, I guess. Would it be cost effective to ship the meat? That's something that I have thought about a lot. I know that people do it, so somebody's making money doing it, but I just don't know the ins and outs of how to do that. But I'll tell you kind of what my plan is at this point is to more or less get, like 2 or 3 steers harvested USDA. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say USDA, there's different rules, of course, that of ways that you can legally sell meat. So, for example, if I want to sell meat by the half, or I think by the quarter, or by the whole, then I can have my guy come out to the ranch, do the harvesting, then he takes it back to a facility that is inspected, and then they cut and wrap, and in that scenario I can sell it by the half. So the key here being is that the guy that comes out to the ranch that actually that actually dispatches the steers is not inspected by anybody. So if I want to sell meat cut by cut or in smaller quantities than a quarter, then I need to get the steers harvested at a USDA inspected facility. So in order to be legal, I can't ship the meat the way that I'm doing it now. So if I take the steers to a USDA inspected facility, then they will harvest the animal, cut, wrap, package everything, and I'll get it back in boxes. And because it has that stamp and it has been inspected, then that enables me to sell in smaller quantities. So that would be anybody that's like selling at a farmer's market would have to do it that way. Anybody selling just cut by cut in any capacity. The meat you buy at the grocery store is harvested at a USDA inspected facility, albeit a much bigger one than I would go to. But them's the rules. So up to this point, I've never done that because I just didn't feel like I had the market for it. And the USDA butcher is like 3 hours away from where we're at. So it's not, it's going to eat up a day taking animals up there. And then I'd have to come back in, several weeks to pick the meat up. So it's going to be a lot of drive and a lot of time, but then it opens up all these other markets. So anyway, that's just what I thought was going to be a brief explanation ended up being maybe more in depth than I'd planned. So when it comes to shipping meat, we would have to get it done up there. And my plan, this is what I was getting around to saying, is I think this year we're going to kind of test the waters with that and take like 2 or maybe 3 steers up there to get them harvested that way. And then just kind of see like how easy or how hard is it to get rid of the meat, get rid of it. That's not the right way to say it, to sell it. If it, like I know Sunny Farms did this and they sold out like in 2 or 3 days. I'm hoping that's what would happen for me as well, but I'm not sure. I can't count on that. So rather than taking all my steers up there and doing them all that way, I figured I would just start with 2 or 3 of them and kind of test the water and see how it goes. The thing about it that is, I don't know, makes it, I guess, more risky for me is that because I'm, taking the steers up there and then I got to go pick up the box meat. So I've got to have a good way to transport that meat. We're talking about, like I said, a 3-hour drive. So if it's hot or if I'm doing that in the summertime, I've got to figure out a way to do that to where the meat's not going to start to thaw. And I've thought about several different ways of doing that. One would be as simple as just putting chest freezers in the back of the truck with a generator and just, running the freezers off of the generator while we drive home. The other would be to make, I saw a guy do this several years ago. I think it was on Sow the Land, which it's more of a homesteading channel, but he made a trailer with, it was all insulated. It was basically a freezer on wheels, or maybe it didn't freeze, but it got cold. I think he could get it down to like 32 degrees with a wall mount air conditioner, of all things. So it might be worth it to make something like that just for transporting it back. And then when I get it home, I've got to have somewhere to keep it. So that means I need more freezers, because right now the amount of freezers that I have is pretty well utilized. So if we start adding, now I need to be able to store 2 additional steers, like that's a lot of freezer space. So I'm on the hook at minimum for buying more chest freezers, and then probably for coming up with some way to transport the meat. I think if I transported the meat in the wintertime, that it would probably be all right, just because, when you pick that stuff up, it's already been in a deep freeze, so it's very frozen. And, if it was like 40 degrees out and I came straight home with it, I would imagine it would be fine. But, you really don't want to take chances with this stuff either, because this is not for my own consumption. I'm, planning to sell this to people, and I don't want anybody to get, anything that's spoiled or not safe or anything like that. So yeah, that's, everything you do comes with challenges. This is no different. So, I guess one of my strengths is that before I do anything, I think it through 1,000 different ways, all the things that could go wrong, and then how am I going to deal with that? So, this results in it taking me a long time to jump into anything, but when I finally do, I guess I'm not very impulsive in that way. So that makes me unfun, but it also, I think helps mitigate risk when I do end up doing stuff like that. So yeah, when it comes to shipping the meat, I mean, eventually I think that is probably something I would like to do. And I was thinking about trying to get in touch with Mike from Our Wyoming Life, because I know they had a business doing that, and just kind of picking his brain and see what he thought about it. If, would you go back and do it again, or what did you learn? All those kind of questions. So I might try to get a hold of him and see what he has to say about it. Let's see. Life and machinery is full of trade-offs. Isn't that the truth? Randy's asking about, will I keep all 3 bulls? And I have talked about this a little bit. And for now, the plan is yes. I feel like I've got places where I can put all 3 of them. And excuse me. And it doesn't feel wasteful to have 3, because I like having 2 herd bulls with the main herd, and then the Bismarck bull, which I guess, and many of you have said this, I need to just come up with a name for that guy, because it's too much of a mouthful to call him the Bismarck bull every time I talk about him. But anyway, I had him up at the steer pasture with our replacement heifers this year, and he took care of them. So that actually worked out really good, being able to separate everybody that way. And assuming his calves don't come out as, these gigantic, gigantic calves that the heifers can't give birth to, then we'll definitely be doing that again. And then the nice thing too is that having three, like let's say Rivet or Little Boy have a problem, which as they get older, that becomes more likely. And it's just because as bulls get older, this is kind of some animal psychology, but younger bulls are very good and very focused on breeding, and that's all they want to do. And then as bulls get older, they become more interested in fighting with each other. And when that starts happening, you get these two massive animals. Even I don't think they're ever actually trying to like hurt each other, but they are fighting for dominance, or they are, sometimes I think they just do it for fun, but that's, when things potentially can happen to them. So if one of those guys went down, it might be nice to have an option of having a third bull that, could go in for them, or, we could bring, I don't know, but we'd figure it out when it happened. But, having a backup's not a bad thing to have. So what determines, I'm going to answer this because it's very relevant. What determines when we take the herd to the winter pasture, or a portion of the herd? And it's really just kind of about timing. I used to take them at the beginning of December, but what ended up happening several times is if we had a dry fall, I'd take them over there in the beginning of December. There would be no grass, so I just have to start feeding them hay almost immediately. And then because there's no grass and you're feeding them sort of a minimum hay ration, when that grass did start to grow, they were just staying on top of it and just keeping it right down at the ground. And it took so long for that grass to ever get ahead of them to where they could just graze it exclusively. So what I've been doing the last couple of years, which seems to have worked better, is I'll wait till like the 1st of January to do it. And usually by then we've had some rain and there is some grass growing there. And this year we've had plenty of rain. In fact, I need to go over there, and I probably will do that in the next couple of weeks and just check fences and make sure that everything's ready to go. Because my plan is after New Year's, probably that first week in January sometime, I'll start moving them over there. The other thing that I wait for is I try to find a window where we don't have rain for a little while, so I can get in the corrals when they're a little bit drier. And it looks like we may get that, actually. I think the timing's going to line up pretty good this year. So that is coming soon. But like I say, I want to give the grass a chance to stock up a little bit over there before I send them. Because one year, I think this has only happened one time, we got heavy fall rain, and by the time I brought them over there, the grass had stocked up enough that I never had to feed any hay over there at all year. So that's what I want to happen again. And we got a chance this year. I think it could happen again, but we'll see. Let's see. So Rob's asking about, have I thought about reaching out to the guys at Barn Talk? They have a direct-to-consumer meat business. I'm sure many folks would love to buy meat from your animals. So I've not thought about that because I've not heard of these guys before. I've heard of this business model, but I don't know specifically. I've never heard of Barn Talk, so maybe that's something I need to look into. How many calves are we expecting this spring? Well, I think there will be 37 cows that should be bred. So hopefully 37 calves, but I'm sure it won't happen like that. It almost never does. We'll end up losing some, or some won't be bred, or we'll have twins, or, you guys know all the things that happen. I think only one time in my memory we got over 100% calf crop, which is unheard of. But yeah, we ended up weaning more calves than we had cows. And obviously, the only way that could happen is everybody had a calf and it lived, and somebody had a set of twins. So I don't certainly expect that probably to ever happen again, but it has happened once. So, um, usually you figure your death loss will be around 10%, is just kind of how it's going to go. I think that's an industry average that I read somewhere. Um, I like my death loss to be as low as possible. Usually you figure you're going to lose one or two almost for sure. So that's just kind of the way it goes. Yeah. Um, a butcher shop that would also buy the meat, that would be cool. Or I've thought about like supplying a restaurant or something like that, but then that comes with a whole other set of challenges. A restaurant, they I assume, I guess I've never done it, so I don't know for sure, but I assume restaurants are going to want a lot of certain cuts and not a lot of some cuts and none of some cuts. So if you were supplying a restaurant, I think you would have to have another outlet to get, to move the rest of the product that the restaurant didn't want. And then the other thing is that you would need a pretty steady supply throughout the year for something like that, grocery store, restaurant, whatever it might be. So it'd be difficult to do that unless you were, of course, this is true with the mail order business too, that I always talk about. You would kind of need to do like 1 or 2 steers a month through the year in order to keep your supply steady and be able to fill orders. Let's see what else we got here. What are my plans for Smokey and Littles? Yeah, a lot of people said they were gonna be the next buddy, but I don't think that's gonna happen. My plan is to just here in a couple of weeks, I'm gonna go through and make my selections of the steers that I want to keep and the heifers that I want to keep, and whoever doesn't find themselves on that list is going to go into the trailer and go down to the sale barn. And I anticipate that those two will be on that trailer. So that's the plan for them. I know some people will be disappointed to hear that or not want to hear that. But you can't keep them all. That's that's just the reality of it. It'd be great if you could, but we've already got a buddy. Once he lives out his days, then we might get to keep another one, but I don't know. But yeah, there's a reason why Smokey and Littles didn't stay at our house too long, and I brought them back here because when they're here, people don't get attached to them, if you catch my drift. What horsepower is the LS, New Holland, and 8N? The LS, we'll just say engine horsepower. So when you talk about tractors, there's engine horsepower and there's PTO horsepower. And usually, what is it? PTO horsepower is like 10% less than engine, generally speaking. Sometimes it could be more. And that's just from when you're taking a horsepower measurement at the flywheel, you're getting that there's minimal losses. When you go from the flywheel through the transmission, through the drivetrain, and get it actually to the PTO or to the wheels, there are losses. So when people talk about horsepower, they usually talk about engine horsepower because it's more. but really your usable horsepower is your PTO or your wheel horsepower. So for the LS, I know the engine horsepower is 101. The New Holland, I think the engine horsepower is 60. In the 8N, I think somebody watching this might know. I think the 8Ns are only like 23 or something like that. They're not very much, but you know, they don't need to be because they're small tractors. You know, I always chuckle that with tractors, they always talk about horsepower. I guess because that's a number that people are more familiar with talking about. But really, torque, I think, is what you would be more concerned with, because, you know, a tractor, you're never thinking about what the top speed or like how fast it can accelerate. You're thinking about how much of a load can it, you know, pull sustainably, and that would be more affected by torque than horsepower. So there you go. Yeah, Barbara saw the new Beyond the Ranch video. I saw that too. Can sell the bottle calves, but you can't eat them. I get that. That would be, yeah. Street Rodder, I don't do politics on this channel, so don't even try to get me to go down that road. But I probably feel, well, no, I'm not. I won't even say it. Too early to put calves out on seasonal pasture with a protein tub and small amount of grain supplement. Yeah, you know, I can't really answer that for you. I don't know what your pasture looks like. I don't know what grasses you have. I don't know anything about it. So, yeah, it's I would think you'd be fine, but you know. Busy, huh? You guys are naming the Bismarck bull. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we might be able to do that. We'll see. We might have to do a poll on that. I think that's how we came up with Buddy's name, was with a poll. So Ralph is asking if I can make my videos longer. You know, that's a question I get quite often. People want longer videos. And I'll tell you, I try to make them as long as I can within reason. They still need to be interesting, and they still need to have the kind of flow that I like for them to have. Basically, it's really difficult sometimes, especially when you're doing something, for example, disking a hayfield. That's a good one. So if I go out and do groundwork on the hayfield, I'm going to be out there all day doing essentially the same thing the whole time. So those videos are really hard to make long, because how do you keep that interesting? You know what I mean? You're just doing the same thing. Or like yesterday, you know, driving to the steer pasture. What am I going to film while I'm in the truck? You know, and in the past, I filmed a little bit while I'm driving, talking to the camera. I always feel like the audio doesn't sound good, so I don't like to do that that much. But it's, yeah, I try to make them as long as I can, but when I'm doing 3 a week, they just kind of end up being what they are, you know. And you'll see there's a range. Sometimes they're only 13 minutes, sometimes they're closer to 30 minutes, and that just depends on what I happen to be doing that day, or how many different things I happen to be doing that day that I feel like are film worthy. Because, you know, a lot of stuff happens off camera that you don't see, and that's just because it wouldn't be a good video. And I know some people say, oh no, we want to see everything. And that's such a small minority of people that would actually sit through that. and I'm trying to make, I try to make videos that I would want to watch. So I always think about, with the videos that I put on my channel, I kind of put them to the test of like, well, if Evan on Country View Acres posted this, would you want to watch it or would you not? You know, and that's kind of how, that's the bar that I set for myself as far as, you know, how I show things. So sometimes they end up being long, sometimes they don't, you know, but always the goal is to make them as long as possible. So what's the plan for the Dodge? That's something I've been thinking about here a lot recently. The plan is still to fix it up and eventually haul hay with it. And I even have thought about like maybe using it more as a daily driver just around here locally. I don't necessarily want to put a lot of far miles on it, but just from my house to here to the winter pasture, the hayfield, you know, the Dodge would probably make more sense to drive that than it does to drive this truck. And it's just more fun to drive, you know. It's a manual, and there's something about an old truck that, and I would say this is true like from the 80s back, where you could roll the window down and you rest your arm on the window and they're just, you know, it feels right. They're just so comfortable. New trucks, you can't really do that. I mean, you can do it, but it just doesn't have the same feel to it. There's just something about those old, you know, my grandpa used to have, oh, it was an 86, I think, square body Chevy that we don't have anymore, which is unfortunate now. I wish that I still had it. But that truck, man, you could just roll the windows down and hang your arm out, and it just, you know, it worked. If you know what I'm talking about, you know, but I know some people are like, what are you saying? This doesn't make any sense. Patricia loves the welding projects. That's good because there are many in store. So yeah, I'd like to get the Dodge fixed up. I mean, the main thing, it doesn't need all that much, honestly, but I would like to get the seat reupholstered before I start driving it a lot. And then, I mean, I don't know, the tires appear to be okay, but it'll be interesting to see once we start putting loads on that truck, what they what they do. They may, you know, sometimes tires can look just fine, and then you put them to the test and it ends up that they're not just fine. And the Jubilee, you know, it's the same story. I'm still I'm getting to it. I'll get around to it. I was, you know, I was thinking about that the other day, and that I've got half a mind to just like put it back together without painting it, because I just kind of feel like that's what's holding me up, is like all the prep work that I have to do. Just, you know, when I think about doing it, it doesn't sound fun. And I'm aware that I'm making the excuse that probably everybody makes. You know, they bite off more than they can chew, and then they don't want to do it. And I really, you know, it's been torn apart this long that I'm just like, no, you got to stick with the plan. You got to repaint it, make it a really nice tractor when you're done. That I think it'll just, you know, someday in the future, we're going to see that tractor finish, and it's going to be all the better if it's painted up and looking good. So that's the plan, but it may take some time. I don't know what to tell you. Oh, Rob's saying 8N's 30 or 35. I didn't think they were that much. I thought an NAA is closer to 30, but I want to say an 8N is less than 30. 25 maybe is what I'm thinking. We'll see. I don't use the Dodge currently. Just I think the battery is dead in it. And so, yeah, I've actually got a box of parts for it that are ready to go in. And I was actually thinking about doing that here in the near future. Maybe when we get a day when it's not raining and windy, that'd be a good thing to do. I'm just chuckling at some of you guys. Well, let's see. Well, I appreciate all. Yeah, 68 Chevy. Let's see. I think the truck, so the truck my grandpa had before that 86 square body was a 72, I think. I really wish I still had that one. That would be, I love the body style on those trucks, but he sold that, I'm thinking, before I was born, so. Cora, you did miss the update on the barn cats. That'd be towards the beginning of the live stream. I was talking about that. Yeah, you know, I'm reading Joel's comment about an old Ram with a 3-speed got killed by a buck. So I'm guessing you hit a deer and it totaled it. Is what you're saying. You know, that's something we don't really have that issue around here. And we do have deer, but I've never hit one. I actually did have a time where I'm pretty sure one hit me. I was driving and I caught something in my mirror and something slammed into the side of my truck. And it, you know, you could hear it. It was pretty obvious. And I got out and looked, and there was, the truck wasn't dented, but just like on the condensation, it was in the, must have been in the wintertime, but you could see like where something had hit it, and there was a bunch of white hair on the truck. So I'm sure that it was a deer, that or a Bigfoot. But you know, I can't really confirm either. Oh, you guys can see Callie. Yeah, she's we got no car seats in the back seat right now, so she's living the good life. Ronnie says he has something he wants to send me. Excuse me. Sorry, I don't know what that was. Don't really know what address to send it to. I'm in Kentucky, way across the country. So we have a P.O. box. I don't really advertise it that much, but it is in the description of all the videos. So that would be the best route to go, unless you're wanting to send me something I don't want, then. That reminds me, I don't know if you guys ever watched Seinfeld, but there was the episode where Jerry got a package and, you know, he thought it could be a bomb, and he's like, I'm bombable. Which, if you haven't seen the episode, I didn't tell the story very well at all. But anyway. Well, I don't know. I think maybe we're going to wrap this up here in a minute. I'm starting to lose my my voice, and I've still got to film today. So my plan is to finish the video that I started yesterday and release it tomorrow, so that we will still have a video this weekend, even though it's not on the day that it's supposed to be. But so yeah, I think we'll wrap this one up here, unless any of you have any burning questions that you want to get in here towards the end. I'll give you a minute or two. Yeah. So this comment saying you hardly see anyone else but me in the videos except for my dad on occasion. And yeah, I mean, well, you guys see my wife every once in a while and the kids every once in a while, but I mean, mostly this is just what my life is. I mean, I do a lot of stuff alone. That's just what it is. I'm not filming around people if that's what you're thinking, but yeah, that's the way it goes. So, alrighty. Well, I think we're going to wrap it here. I've still got a few hours that I can get some filming done and hopefully get that video out to you guys tomorrow. So I appreciate everybody showing up for the live stream and everybody that sent us Christmas cards. Thank you very much. We always enjoy getting those. So I appreciate it, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.